This industry is completely different from even
Yeah.
3 years ago, let alone 10, 15, 20 years ago. So that right there, because you're such an important person on the drum community as far as content goes, you know, and have so many numbers, everybody that's watching this show, go back and write down what he just said and utilize that, because it shows you don't have to sell yourself out and do buffoonery and all kind of things to be successful. You can be authentic, you can have integrity, you know what I'm saying? And that's big. Real quick, if you're new here, welcome to the TrevBeats Show. Hit subscribe so we can keep building together. And to my regulars who show up every time, I see you. And your viewership means everything. If you ever want to help fuel this channel so we can do even bigger things, you can grab some fresh gear from the merch store below or jump into the backstage membership next to the subscribe button. Now back to the show.
TrevBeats Show, TrevBeats Show. Yeah. TrevBeats Show, TrevBeats Show.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the TrevBeats Show. So today we have another brother in the building who completely embodies the 360 principle. Now, you know what that is. That's, you know, working with people in different capacities, meeting them one way, working another way. We talk about it a lot. He didn't just lock down the drum throne for iconic hip hop artists like Nas or, you know, undeniable pocket that he brought to people like Leela James, Fantasia, and even Tweet. He built a massive global brand from the ground up. And that's one thing that a lot of us know him from, including myself, which was very inspiring and inspired hundreds of thousands of musicians online. He's a DW, Sabian, and Remo artist, and an educator, a mentor, and one of the most exciting, authentic voices in the game today. Put your hands together for the amazing Mr. Haze Amaze. My bro.
God bless you. That intro was crazy.
How you doing, man?
I can't call it, man. I can't call it. I'm doing well.
Good.
Blessed, man. Blessed.
So,
grateful for it all, dude.
So you just had a massive milestone just happen in your life. Tell us about what just happened.
Yes. I just moved out to the West Coast, man.
Wow.
Moved out, to the West Coast from the East Coast. I'm from the DMV, been there all my life. I'm 29 years old now. And I definitely felt the move. I started feeling like it should happen a few years back, actually. But then I ended up meeting my wife. You know, we got engaged, got married, started a family. So it was best to just kind of settle in Virginia and just stay there for a few while we, just the beginning years of building our family, pretty much. So, you know, she's always been open to moving and everything like that. But the timing just felt perfect, as of recent. So been out here for the past 3 weeks now and been loving it. You know, I've been back and forth to Vegas over the past few years doing a couple residencies or, just doing shows and things like that. And, it's close to California. I would love to be in California, but...
You smart. Trust me, you smart, bro. California I'm born and raised here, but it is off the meat rack right now, man. So I think, being California adjacent is dope. You know what I mean? Because that's a, sometimes 30-minute flight. You know what I'm saying? Like, depending on the time. Right. So, and, you're just close to the game and then you can get away from it. I mean, but for a lot of people that may not know, y'all just had 2 days of 125 degrees, which is, even in my California standards, that's the only place I hear that gets hotter than that may be Arizona. You know what I'm saying? And then we got to talk about like Dubai and stuff like that. But I do agree with you though. You know, you have mentioned that the humidity is different. So it is a lot more tolerable, when you don't have that humidity thing going. So, man, first of all, thanks again for coming. I really appreciate it. I got hip to you online and then I started checking out your videos, man. They were so informative and just, you trying to break stuff down for people so they can understand it, not being a gatekeeper, showing your setups and being transparent. It was really great content, man. I was like, yo, I got to meet this brother, man. So I'm glad you were able to pull up. So what I found in my research, though, and it makes sense, you know what I'm saying? Now it kind of makes sense that back in 2012, you kind of had like a fork in the road, right? So you had to decide, were you going to one day play for the Rams or something, or were you going to, take your musical path? Now, here's the funny thing, and I don't know if I told you, I think I did, but a good friend of mine I went to college with, bass player, he went to Suitland. You know what I'm saying? My boy, his name was Artem Oogie Belton. This is like, 30-something years ago. I'll just never forget that because I didn't really know too many people from that area, but he went to Suitland High School. But so you made a decision, obviously to go the musical route, right? So what made you at that moment, say, I'm gonna do music? Like, what was the thing that said, you know what? Let's choose music.
So to be honest, the main thing that made me choose like going the music route is because if I didn't, then I wouldn't have been able to go to Suitland because I didn't live in the zone, like the district or whatever like that, in order for me to go. And the only way I could go is if I was in the CVPA program, which was the Center for Visual and Performing Arts program. And they'll have the bus that'll go off because I lived in Upper Marlboro and Suitland is in Forestville, Maryland. So it could be about 25 minutes or 30 minutes or whatever like that. But I didn't live in the zone.
Gotcha.
Pretty much. And that was like the main thing. In order for me to actually go to the school, I had to be in a program. And I couldn't be in that program and do football at the same time.
Right.
Until years later, they kind of start making exceptions. And I was like, wow, why couldn't y'all do that when I was coming in here? But yeah.
So you basically were going there to play football, but you had to use the music to get you to the school, but your focus was still football even when you were at the school. Was that what it was, or?
No. So what I wanted to do was play football, but I didn't go there for football.
Oh, okay. I got it.
I went there for the music program.
I see.
Because that was the only way I was going to be able to.
I see. Okay, I got you now. I'm understanding. So, well, I mean, obviously you made a great choice and it's working for you and everything's happening and, you definitely have a proclivity for music. So I'm sure you probably just as eager on football, but the drums was a great choice, bro. So that's all good. So, now give me some of the background. Did you come up, playing jazz or playing in church, or how did the whole drum bug in general start for you?
Yeah, so for me, I come from a family of music. Everybody in my family sings. My dad, he's a guitarist. He plays bass as well, and he swear that he can kick a pocket, on the drums. And my older cousin, he's an all-around instrumentalist. Plays pretty much everything. My brother, he also plays guitar. So yeah, coming from a line of musicians pretty much. And when I was younger, music was like the hobby. Playing drums was the hobby. It's something I did pretty much every day, not really making it a thing to where it's like, I want to do this for real one day. Because like I said, I still wanted to be in the NFL or be a police officer. But yeah, when I was younger, I was singing in the choir, really. I was singing in the choir a majority of like my childhood up until about maybe 14 or 15 is when I really started playing drums in church more. I started playing at my uncle's church. They had a New Year's Eve service and he asked if I could play. I played there. And then after that, they needed a drummer at the church. So thankfully my cousin, she was like kind enough to come and pick me up from my parents' house. Both my cousins actually. Her and her husband. They were kind enough to come pick me up from my parents' house each Sunday and dropped me back off because I didn't drive, at 15 years old.
Right.
And I was playing there all the way until I probably got about 18, I want to say 18 or 19 or something like that. And then, I really just, started in church, really. So when I was listening to songs, and a lot of the gospel songs that I don't know them from drummer's perspective. I know them from singing because I was in the choir. So it's like when I had to start actually playing on more drums, I'm like, wow, I gotta actually focus on like the drum parts and stuff like that. But yeah, pretty much gospel roots. Yeah. And
That's
then
crazy.
from there, started going to like jam sessions and open mics and stuff like that. And that's where I really feel like my musicality and like getting deeper rooted into music came from. So it's like I have gospel roots, but not necessarily playing wise. Um, my
See,
playing wise, like my roots really is coming from, like being around, open mics and stuff like that.
got you. So now, what was the first gig? Like, what was the first real gig where you're like, oh, this is a name artist? Like, I finally got my first professional shot. What was that gig?
Raheem DeVaughn.
Ah,
Yeah.
of course. I got Raheem's headshot somewhere around here when he was first
All right, yeah.
starting. He was discovered by a good friend of mine that passed away by the name of OG Pierce. And I remember
Okay.
when he first discovered Raheem, man, that's crazy, dude.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Wow.
sir. Yeah,
Wow.
I was still. I don't even think I was old enough when I started playing with him. That was, I think, 2018 or so. I forget how old I was, but I just always remember being the baby of the group. Like I was younger than everybody.
Yeah.
Most of the stuff I don't think at that time I could even get into clubs,
Right.
really.
Right.
Without them, well, let me see your ID, because I still had a baby face.
Right.
I ain't have like the mustache and all that type of stuff. But
That's
yeah,
funny, man.
that was my first gig. The first one
And
was in
then
the Dominican Republic.
and so you flipped that, and then what happened after that? Where'd you go after Raheem?
After him, shortly after I started playing with him, I think the next one after that would be Tweet. Yep, like that next year. Yeah, like 28 in the end of 2018, 2019, something like that. I started playing with her. And then from there, it was Leela James. Um, that's around, yeah, right when the pandemic lifted. That's when
Right.
I started playing with her. And then came Nas and most recently Little Simz.
Mm.
And since last November,
Mm.
is when I started touring with her. And, been with her ever since. And pretty much those four artists, other than Raheem, I don't play for him anymore. But yeah, those artists, like, these are the gigs that I've like
Right.
consistently been on year after year after year.
Wow.
Gratefully.
Well, we can't think light of Nas. I mean, Nas, bro, is one of the icons of hip hop, bro. So it's like, and it's vastly different from R&B. So it's like, that requires a different, sound, I'd imagine, different approach, different, use of fills and all that. So how did you basically, separate the styles and be authentic to Nas? Like, how did you say, you know what? I got to kind of pull from a different bag. And sonically, what did you change for the Nas gig as opposed to all the gigs that were pretty much living in the R&B space?
Yeah. So it started with listening to the records.
Mm-hmm.
He's heavily inspired by jazz.
Mm-hmm.
I know you've heard a lot of his stuff, and it's a lot of jazz samples, and
Mm-hmm.
even R&B samples. It's a lot of different worlds kind of mixed into his music. But I think for me, what really, really helped me was listening to Carlos McSwain. Los,
Los. Yeah. Come
as
on.
everybody, as everybody knows him. I never got a chance to meet him in person, but I know he was in the hip hop world,
Yeah.
playing with Snoop and other people.
Yeah.
So I really, really watched him, and because I'm an energetic person, you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
I didn't want to just be sitting back, boom, boom, boom. You
Right.
know what I mean?
Right. Right.
Like that. Because that's not really what it called for. But just being able to watch videos of him and just kind of see, okay, I see how he's approaching, fills and everything like that. So that's kind of where I drew that inspiration from. But what it really was is when I got the gig, I was coming behind somebody else. And at first I was just kind of filling in the gap and kind of playing off of what the drummer before me was doing. Until we did a European tour is when I really got comfortable with the music. And I started, adding my own flavor into it.
Yeah.
And I just remember after one of the shows, the tour manager here told me, he said, "What you do," because "Hate Me Now," that's like a big energetic song. And at first, that was really the only song that I would kind of like open up on, pretty much. But he was like, "No, what you doing, Hate Me Now? We want that on every song." So from that point on is when I kind of flipped the switch to like, all right, I'm just kind of coming in after somebody, just filling in the gaps to like, nope, this is my thing now. And they want me to make it my thing,
Yeah.
I think that's an important thing. When you're asked to kind of fill in a position, how I normally go about that is I'll normally go in and just, play what they're used to until they're asking me, all right, open up and like be you, do your thing. You know what I mean? Just serving the gig and serving the music. But the difference comes in like my attack. It comes in a lot of times like the choices that I make when it comes to doing drum fills. A lot of the drum fills that I'm using while I'm playing hip hop grooves, they're not really ghost notey, or they're not really like I like to use dynamics coming, through fills or, playing fills going into the chorus or the verses and things like that, like, yeah, stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
But if I'm playing, in the hip hop realm, it's like, like, it's a bit more precise, I feel like. And yeah, if that's the word that I want to use. So when it comes to like approaching, kind of separating the gigs, I would say that's that's kind of my mindset behind it.
Yeah. So now it's funny you say Los, man. R.I.P. Los came in the Snoop band after I left with the original band, and it's like, man, I found out a lot later he had recorded very young, I guess, some important gospel stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like, and he was really young. I believe I want to say it was either John P. Key or Fred Hammond or somebody like that. He was young, playing like 15 years old. I didn't know this till much later, so he was a very musically rich person, you know what I'm saying? And he influenced a lot of people on a lot of fronts. So it's super dope that you studied him, and then as far as your approach goes, that makes sense because that's the professional thing to do, which is the music is saying this and I need to adjust my approach to the music. Now, the one thing I'll say I noticed about you is your visual, your nonverbal communication. Your smiling and energy is through the roof. It comes out so much on your content, I don't think I've ever seen you play drums and not be smiling. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, but that is something that artists pick up on. It's something that the audience picks up on. A lot of us be too serious and trying to, we don't even control our faces and it might look crazy sometimes, that kind of thing right there is big, man, because we're living in a visual society. And it just, even if I have you on mute and I see you playing, the energy's coming through. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's an incredible trait. And I believe that it's something that follows you. Like, I'm sure people are picking up on that energy, man. So don't ever stop that, because that's huge, bro. You know what I'm saying? That's huge. And it speaks to the success that you've been having. Now, speaking of success, correct me if I'm wrong, but did you play at Madison Square Garden?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we did. We did that joint. Yeah, that was a few years back.
Yeah, with Nas. That was a King Disease, right? Yeah.
Disease 3, yes, sir. Yes, sir. The trilogy, the 1, 2, and 3. But it was that show. And the beautiful part about it is we weren't on the stage. We played behind the stage, like in the the loading dock. Like I've always wanted to do that.
Right.
Like I forget who it was that I saw, but I saw people like, playing live shows from like the dressing room or, loading dock or behind the curtain on the stage, things like that. And I'm like, dang, I want to experience that and see what it's like. And it was energetic. They had the little screens back there.
Yeah.
And the best part about it is we'll be playing there again, not with Nas, but this fall in the summer, we're doing the tour with the Gorillas. Little Simz is opening up for the Gorillas. And Madison Square Garden is gonna be one of the places that we're performing at. So yeah, it's a nice.
Yeah, no, that's crazy. So, Q does that with Hamilton. They build him he gets a whole like room basically to himself, like completely, away from everybody, and they literally build it. So he has his own room every time he does a show, which is crazy. And I got to do that too at the Hollywood Bowl a couple years back. We did this Lion King anniversary thing, and so we were all behind the stage, with screens just like that. It's a different vibe, it's still a party, but it's more like it's almost like a session and live energy. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So now, let's talk a little bit about gear. So I know that you're a DW guy, right? So you play DW, and tell us everything that you're playing right now.
So what I'm playing right now is I have a custom kit. It is cherry mahogany. Cherry mahogany is my favorite hybrid shell. What do I have? I have a 22-inch bass drum, 3 14-inch snares. One of them is the pie snare. I have a 10-inch snare, 8, 10, 12, 16, 18. Standard sizes pretty much. And that's pretty much what I'm playing.
And cymbal-wise, what cymbals are you with? What heads are you with?
Sabian. I'm using Sabian. Using Remo drum heads, of course.
The best.
And Vader sticks.
Yep, the
is
best.
What I'm using. So yeah, that's like, and then from gig to gig, what I use, like what models I use is different, of course. Like when I'm playing some of the R&B stuff, like Leela James, I'll use kind of a brighter sound. Then when I'm with Simz, I try to go for something a little darker. And when I'm playing with Nas, it's just kind of like, what do I even use when I'm playing with? I think I use like the Ozone, some 15-inch hats, like some natural finish stuff. At one point I was using like a 16-inch cymbal when I was playing with him. I know, for a while it's been frowned upon. Oh, you playing bigger venues, bigger cymbals, stuff like that. But it's like I was using the small cymbals because that's what was fitting the music,
Right.
But yeah, like, between some brilliant finish stuff and some dark finishes, some trashy stuff, I kind of just mix it all depending on what gig I'm on.
Well, and yeah, I mean, I kind of have the opposite of bigger venues, bigger cymbals sometimes because, the smaller the cymbal, the more it cuts through. So, if you're in a gigantic venue, I don't know. I mean, I use big cymbals in general, but I mean, a 16, once upon a time, this is the funny thing, your generation, probably not so much, but my generation, usually 16 and 18 was it, bro. Like it wasn't no 17s wasn't cracking till like the 90s, maybe 2000. Like it was 16, 18, a 20-inch ride and 14-inch hi-hats. All the craziness of cymbals, that revolution didn't start until probably, mid to late 90s, even in like early 2000s. It was very, coming up, it was kind of, and then when you saw Weckl and Vinny, that's kind of when the splashes got popular. Peter Erskine, and I tell people, Peter Erskine on the first Patitucci record, that was right at the time when the dry ride was an actual named thing. So that the dry ride he did with Zildjian, and that was the kind of the first time we heard that super extra dry ride with the no finish. So the cymbal revolution isn't that old, as far as everybody going crazy. And then when, Weckl brought the holes, then that made everything happen with the holes, and then nothing kind of changed. And then I brought the clap stack in it. So it's like the cymbal thing is still kind of, kind of new. But now, as far as drums go, what's the deal with you? Do you do a lot of dampening on your drums, or do you like the shells to speak for themselves and you play it a certain way?
Yeah, most times I like the shells to speak for themselves. I love resonance. I like to hit the drum and just let it scoom, scoom, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that's the difference between when I'm playing, bringing it back to gigs that I'm doing. When I'm doing R&B gigs, I'll let the drum sing. But when I do Nas or when I do Little Simz, so most recently, speaking of Drumheads, our emperors, clear emperors, those are pretty much the standard and my favorite to use for live shows. But um I went to Powder Strokes with Little Simz because I like the depth that you get out of the sound. So on the last tour that we did, I was using the Power Stroke 3 Black Dot
Oh, wow.
on my toms. And then when we do, just like normal festival runs or when we're backlining the kit, I'll do like regular Power Stroke 3s. Regular, Power Stroke or pinstripes on the toms, just to give it a deeper sound. Um, Not saying that the Emperors can't capture that sound, but I felt myself trying to use more dampening or
Right.
things like that to kind of cover the sound that I'm going for instead of just going ahead and using the drum head that
Right.
fits what I'm trying to hear.
Right.
So yeah, that's a huge thing.
Right.
I like the resonance when it comes to R&B, but if I'm playing any type of like hip hop or honestly even some rock, I'll kind of go for a 30 tom sound, or on my snare, I'll use like tape sometimes to just kind of shorten the resonance of it.
Yeah.
Honestly, just depends on the gig and what the records sound like.
Right.
And yeah,
Well, you
So
said something that I think we need to touch on a little bit, because one thing I'm noticing is that I don't think a lot of people know what the options are of drum heads, right? Because we see the same, Ambassador, Emperor, Pinstripe, we see those
right.
so much. And there's hundreds that Remo makes, that
Yes.
Evans makes, everybody makes. And it's like,
Mhm.
it speaks to the fact that the whole interaction that we used to have with drum stores, and it's going away, because you used to go to the drum store. Here in LA, we still have Pro Drum. Shout out to Stan and Jerry, of course, one of the meccas. But, you can still go there, see what's going on, check out. But now in the corporate world and just the big box store world, that relationship's gone. So a lot of people look to the internet and social media to find out what drumheads they should be using instead of investigating,
Exactly.
to see what's going on. So the fact that you experiment and you're like, this is what I'm trying to achieve. Now, of course, you're endorsed, so it's a little different, but it's not different in the mindset. You just decided that it was
Right.
important enough to try to investigate. You know what I'm saying? So, I think that's also speaks to, why you being successful, man. Now, let's move on to another kind of success, which is almost one of the most important ones these days, which is online. I mean, you've built a crazy, crazy, crazy online community with millions and millions of views across all the platforms. And, a lot of people that are great drummers struggle, to find what their voice is, you know what I'm saying, behind the kit and the camera. They could be a great player, but it doesn't connect, right? So
Yeah.
what's the secret, to pulling back the curtain and making content that feels like authentic, but also it's like it feels true. It doesn't feel like you're just playing for the algorithm. You know what I'm saying? Like
Right.
how, you've headlined, drum events globally and you connected with people all over the world, Brazil, Japan. So, it's just how it's been building a borderless kind of world online empire presence. How did you do that, man? Because it's really, really done well.
Man, blessings. You said it in your question. Authenticity. That's
Mm.
I thrive on that. My uncle, who's also my pastor, he told me one time, He said, "What's from the heart reaches the heart." And that stuck with me. And it really, really kind of helped me put into perspective a lot of times why things work or why things don't work. So kind of going by that quote, what's from the heart reaches the heart is a big part of who I am. It's a big part of my brand. It's not just like, oh, I'm a brand, so I'm just gonna, do this. I'm just gonna always do the things that, that people want to see. I'm always gonna follow the trends, blah, blah. Like, I'm the type of person where I don't really give in to trends. And and I'll say for those who are watching, that can help you a lot. And it can harm as well because, we know that numbers speak, and a lot of times the numbers that we seek come from trendy things. It comes from, doing whatever the hottest thing out there is. And then, you start to boost, 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 boost all of these numbers and stuff like that. But if that's not authentically who you are, or if it doesn't resonate with you morally, I think that's something to kind of stay away from. And that's how I do my stuff. A lot of trends don't resonate with me, so I don't take part. A lot of how the world goes about things doesn't resonate with me. So I don't take part in it. You know what I mean? I don't go with what the crowd is doing most times. Being authentically who I am. And I've had to learn, like, you can make things that you like, and that when you watch, you can look back and say, I'm glad that I did that. And then you can make things that is like, why did I do that? I don't know if you've ever posted a video or ever cut a record or played a show or whatever like that, and then you watch back and you're like, man, why would I even do that? You know what I mean?
For sure, I've done that. Absolutely.
So for me, the thing has become, I want to make stuff that I'm proud of.
Yeah.
Of course, I want it to resonate with the people and all of that great stuff, but I want to look back and not be ashamed of what I see on the camera from myself. So I mean, I'm just, and I've been behind cameras for so long. I'm an extrovert as well. So, being behind the cameras or being in front of lights or being in front of people and expressing myself and being who I am, I'm not ashamed of that. And I think a lot of it comes from like self-esteem. When your self-esteem isn't as high, you kind of put yourself in a shell when you get around people or when it comes to like being in front of people. Um, but it's the kind of thing of, I'ma just be me, and who's gonna like it is gonna like it. Whoever isn't, isn't.
Yeah.
I make this kind of comparison quite a bit when I'm talking about these kind of things. It's for me like the difference between a snarky puppy and a Beyonce. Beyonce, she could sell out a crowd. Snarky Puppy could sell out a crowd. Their crowds may not be the same, but regardless, if they do a show, they both can sell out crowds for who likes them. Snarky Puppy, they not out here like, oh, how can I go get Beyonce's crowd? And Beyonce ain't like, oh, Snarky Puppy's musician crowd, I want to snag them. So let me make music that's only gonna, cater to them so they can come like me. You know what I mean? It doesn't become that kind of thing. Like I said, you said it in your question, authenticity. That's the biggest thing, when you ask about what's the secret to it. I don't have a secret necessarily. For me, it's authenticity, consistency, quality. Works, quality is a big thing as well because it's not just, your audio quality or your visual quality. It's the quality of the content that you're putting out. Are people gaining anything from your content? Are you making them laugh? Are they learning? Are you making them feel loved? Is your content making them do a self-check? You know what I mean? Like mental health awareness. You know what I mean? Like, what is the quality of your content? And then, finding your niche, you know what I mean? All of these kind of things help, to build what you do, So I think, in a nutshell, that'll be
nah, bro. That's the bar. That's a bar, bro. Those are bars right there. We're gonna get the on that. That's a bar. Hey, listen, because it's important, these type of, man, listen, bro, as far as, having these conversations, if we didn't have this type of information, I wouldn't be doing this show. It is for things like you just said, for people to hear it from you. I like people to hear from the people what is their journey and their secret sauce and the ways that they have been able to be successful, because that's how we keep it going and that's how we push the next group of people. You know what I'm saying? Because if you gatekeep and you're always trying to covet and hold it in, no one's gonna know. It's like, yeah, it might be good for you, but man, we need to impart, because everything's changing. This industry is completely different from even 3 years ago, let alone 10, 15, 20 years ago. So that right there, because you're such an important person on the drum community as far as content goes, and have so many numbers, everybody that's watching this show, go back and write down what he just said and utilize that, because it shows you don't have to sell yourself out and do buffoonery and all kind of things to be successful. You can be authentic, you can have integrity, you know what I'm saying? And that's big. So Haze Amaze LLC, the business guy, right? You're not just a side man. For anybody that might not know, you don't just play drums. So you got a whole business going. So, you do tracking, consulting, education, creative direction. Now, when it comes to tracking, I know you do sessions, but is that more like making tracks for people's shows? Do you make backing tracks for people's shows too, or some of the gigs that you do ever?
No, I don't actually. And that's something over the past few years that I kept telling myself, I want to get into production, I want to get into, making beats or tracks and stuff like that. But it's just, like I said, it's not something that doesn't resonate with me right now. I would love to do it or learn how to do it, but it's not a priority for me.
Right.
And I haven't forced myself to sit down and actually learn that side of things. So no, I don't actually. I do not. I do not. When
Well, it's good that I love when people are honest and because that also plays into the authenticity. So that what you just said is literally the same thing as being a jazz guy and trying to bring your 18-inch kit to a other gig, an R&B gig. And it's like, that's not it. So knowing the limitations and it's better to just say, you know what, that's not my thing, than to go do something based off of money and do a horrible job at it.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
So
that's
and that you just told that story even in that decision, because most people are gonna say, well, yeah, I'm want to produce and and I'm producing, and you might not really be, and you might not really know the stuff. So it's like, what are you doing it for, right? And then it becomes, if you break it all down, you're really doing it for the wrong reasons. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, yeah, that's why they have that phrase, the jack of all trades, master of none, right? It's like, everybody wants to do everything at a low level rather than do at least one thing at a high level. So I think, that speaks to your character and is validating everything that I thought about you before we've gotten to get to know each other. And once again, more very important information. So now, a while back, you said something talking about Nas, about when you were playing, and you put a little sauce in, they came back and said, hey, we want kind of that energy for the whole thing, right? And that brought to mind a trend that I've noticed over the years, and I actually wrote a book about this, which is, over the years, artistry has kind of changed a little bit as far as when we used to go see Michael, we went to go see Michael. We could, the band was great, but we didn't care about the band. Michael captivated us, or Prince captivated us. James Brown captivated us. But now it's like when you go to a show, the artist, it's almost like, if you don't have can you imagine a show of recent history with no video wall, no dancers? No, it's like, it almost doesn't exist, right? Because artistry has kind of waned. So while that's been happening, they've been looking at us to provide the energy and help the excitement and the emotional connection. So the drum chair has happened to go like this, And it's almost now, you know, if you remember, it used to just be you heard that style of playing in R&B, you know. Then it started creeping over into pop. And then it started creeping over into hip hop, you know, because a lot of stuff now, I was telling Brian on another interview, a lot of stuff that we are asked to play now, he and I would have been fired for in the 90s, straight away. Straight away. So we've seen a whole shift, and I believe, and you could go check out the book, I'll send it to you. Everybody, it's called The Show Got Bigger, The Song Got Smaller, and The Chops Got Louder. And it's literally an analysis on why drums and drummers have been asked to take the emotional responsibility that used to be the artist.
Wow.
It's real, man. It's a real thing because it's a real thing. So, but you do it with grace, man, and you do it tastefully, and you're playing for the records, and that's the main job that we have as drummers, bro. You know what I'm saying? So, Aaron Spears, man, you know, we lost one of the greats, man. We all loved him, man. What a phenomenal human and drummer. You know, I know he was kind of in your area, so did you know him personally as well coming up? Or, you know, he was an influence of yours, obviously, but did you get any chance to spend with him at all, or?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Aaron was like a big brother to me. I first met him, I think I was probably 14, 15. Between 14 and 16, I went to a shed at a local studio, and he came through. You know, he was there, and I actually got to share with him at that shed. I feel like I'm saying shed a lot, but I
shed
actually
some
got
light
to
on it.
sit down
Shed some light on it, man.
and he didn't take it light. Like that's one of the things that I appreciated. Like he wasn't just like, oh, this is some young kid from around the area, so I'm gonna just pity patter. He was playing, you know. And after that, you know, met him, shook his hand, and got to just talk to him for a little bit. But then as the years came, you know, he was just, he was just always there for me. And he was one of the guys who it was like, you know, here's my number, hit me if you need anything. And when I actually called him or texted him, he responded. You know what I mean? You know, a lot of times it's what they call convention talk. Oh, hit me up, man. I got you, you know, stuff like that. And, you know, some people don't follow through with that, but he did. And you know, just over the years and years and years after that, we built you know, deeper connection, being able to talk to him. You know, he was probably one of the only guys who I've saw and who I knew that had both worlds, you know, family and music, you know, and I was able to talk to him about that quite a bit, you know, just always asking, you know, how do you find that balance, you know, how you do this, how you do that. He really, really helped me with that because he was what I wanted to be, you know, professional musician, you know, traveling, touring, and, you know, was able to still have success in the family side of things, you know, spiritual side of things. So it's like, you know, that was rare, you know. So you know, he became a big influence for me and a big brother to me. The studio that we started to see him cut out of recently before his passing, you know, I was one of the ones to help build, you know, the walls. You know, we went over there with Mitch from Automute. It was me, Mitch, and one of my good friends, Brendan, from back home. And we, you know, we spent time, sat down and ate, laughed, joked, you know, built the wall and, you know, everything like that. It was just a really, really, really good time. So, you know,
That's dope.
He right before I got Raheem's gig, because the first gig with Raheem was in the Dominican Republic, and of course, you need a passport to get over there. And when I really wanted to take music more serious, Aaron was the person that I had talk to about that. You know, I was like, I want to take things to the next level. You know, what are some things that I should do? And for anybody that's watching this, always ask questions. Ask questions. Don't be ashamed. Don't be afraid of how stupid you might think your question is. Don't feel like you got it all together. don't try to seem like you got it all together. If you have OGs in the game, ask them questions. I don't understand why people are so scared to ask questions. Ask questions. So
Well,
yeah, I asked Aaron. I was just like, I want to go to that next level. What should I do? He gave me a list. He was like, okay, do you have a drum rider? You know, do you have your passport? Do you have this? Do you have that? I didn't have none of that. So, you know, as soon as I finished talking to him, that's the first thing I did. I got right to it. And my mom, she was trying to encourage me to get my passport, but it took for Aaron to say it for me to actually go and do it. And it's crazy because just a short time after getting my passport is when I got the call to do Raheem, and it was out of the country. If I didn't have my passport, I wouldn't have been able to do the gig and probably wouldn't have got that gig, you know?
happened.
So yeah, and super,
Yeah.
super influential.
Yeah, man, he was just a one of a kind, man, and it's amazing. But now hearing that, bro, it okay. So it's stuff is connecting because no, for real, man, because it's like Aaron has such a positive influence on so many people, but the way you're carrying yourself, and let's talk about this, your goal. So, and we got a couple things I want to address out of what you just said. First of all, we'll talk about the question thing. So I can tell you exactly why people don't ask questions, and it's a 3-letter word that is the most dangerous word in our whole life, which is called ego. That's why people don't ask questions. So it's like, when you it's humbling to ask a question and to say, hey, because you're at the same time admitting, hey, I don't know this. What can I do to be better? But if your ego's blocking you, you're not going to want to put out there in the world that you don't know something. So that's exactly why people aren't asking questions. But let's go back to the bigger thing, because it leads me to my next question. But, the goal. So you said, not, I want to be the fastest drummer. I want to have the most money. I want to have this. You said, I want to have a successful family off the stage and be a successful musician, right? And I can tell you, is absolutely possible, right? So I just had 26 years with my wife a couple weeks ago. It's not a game.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It's very, it's very possible. It's very, I'll give it to myself. Come on, why not?
Yes, sir.
But, it's possible. And, for you to be your age and have made that decision, I think that's going to go great for you, because one of the best things you can have moving through this crazy, Star Wars said, you'll never find a more wretched hive of scum and villainy. That's the music business. You know what I'm saying? So it's like moving through this thing, if you don't have the right person on your side, it can make you want to get out of it. So you already are halfway there to winning the battle because you have a partner that's there with you. And, and I can, but see, once again, bro, you see it. This is what I'm saying. All the successes that you're having, there's millions of drummers that try to do stuff online. It doesn't pop off. But just like you said about the passport, if you wouldn't have had it, you wouldn't have been able to do the gig. So maybe you got the gig because you had it. We don't know. There's things called laws of attraction. Right. There's things called manifesting. There's all these things that people say that mean the same thing, right? Put it out there and it comes back to you. So that leads me to the whole beyond the stage mission, right? So, you talk about your faith and family and, letting God's light shine through your brand, which you do. So, when the sticks are down and you're off the stage and the bus parks, what's the ultimate, like at the end, this is at the end of your career and you've done the Haze Amaze thing. You've done it and you hit all your bucket list. What is the ultimate impact that you want Haze Amaze legacy to leave for the next generation?
I would say I'm trying to bottle it into a word, but I can't. I can't just so the ultimate legacy would be just, I mean, pretty much just like the last question, how you said it in your, in your question. Just you said it in your question. Letting God's light shine. That I think for me, that's the huge thing. Family. taking care of family and just showing people that it's possible to be the good guy and have success. You don't have to be the bad guy to have success. You don't have to do people dirty. You don't have to be grimy, like you just said, slums and everything like that. You don't have to be like that in order to have success. But it comes down to, what do you define success to be? Like, what is success to you? For me, success is, having a beautiful family, having that bond with my family, you know, um, being able to inspire other musicians. For me, that's success. But for somebody else, success might be, like you said, having the most money in the world, being the best, fastest drummer in the world. That may be, somebody else's success. But for me, my success is, just having an amazing relationship with my family. My son, loving me, my wife loving me, my daughter's loving me, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Being there
Yeah.
for me, respecting me,
Yeah.
everything like that. So for me, it'd just be that kind of thing. Like, yeah, you could be the greatest drummer in the world. You can do all of these, you can have your goals and all of that type of stuff, but what does it come down to for you?
Yeah.
What do you want to succeed in?
Yeah.
And my success, like I said, is in my family.
Yeah.
And with branding, like I said, you could be the good guy. You know what I
Right.
mean? You can have a kind heart and succeed.
Yeah.
You know, but ultimately, just sharing the love of Jesus Christ, man. That's like the hugest thing for me, and just loving life. I'm not
Yeah.
I'm not a very high maintenance person. I'm very low maintenance, and I'm cool with just having the bare minimum and being able to make things work. You know what I mean? Like that's where I find my joy.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it just comes down to that kind of thing for me, when it
Well,
comes to
man,
legacy.
that's awesome, bro. I love to hear that, man. Why don't you shout out the fam band? Like, how many kids? What are the ages? All that kind of stuff.
Yeah, yeah. I got you. Yeah. So my youngest, Hazeman Abraham III, we call him H3.
Yeah.
He's 2.5 now. He's turning 3 in October. And then we have my middle daughter, Zoe, and then my oldest daughter, Mariah. Um, Mariah's actually she's doing some good things. She loves sports.
Mm.
So, I'm pretty sure we'll be seeing a lot out of her when it comes
Mm-hmm.
to sports. And then my little daughter, Zoe, she's the like extrovert. You know what I mean?
Oh,
She
wow.
loves acting and singing and just being herself. And she inspires me so much because at her age, she's in middle school now, so she just turned 12, and at her age, she's comfortable with who she is and
Mm.
being herself, no matter who might call it quirky or weird or whatever like that. Like, she's just like, I'm me. And just that kind of energy is
Yeah.
very close to how I was when I was younger. I didn't ever care what people thought about me. Of course, I had those thoughts in my mind of, oh, it might not be cool if I do this, will people think I'm cool? I've
Right.
had those thoughts before, because who hasn't?
Right.
But I've just never cared about fitting into the crowd. And
Yeah.
she's just like that. She doesn't care about fitting into the crowd.
Yeah.
And then, with H3, my son, I mean, he loves to play. He loves cars. He loves airplanes. You know what I mean? Like, he loves all these things. He's just enjoying life. And then my wife, like you said, you celebrated 26 years in November. I'll be celebrating. I think this would be 4 or 5 years for us. We got married in 2022. So yeah,
Okay,
it'll be
cool.
it'll be four complete. But been knowing her
Congrats.
and been with her. Thank you, sir. Been with her since 2018. So
Yeah.
8 going on 9 years at this point. That we've been together.
Sure.
And married in 2022. So she's seen each stage. You know what I mean? She's seen before I got the big gig. You know what I
Right.
mean? She's
Right.
seen when it was just like, dang, I'm watching the video and I'm like, dang, that's what I want to do. And then she's seen when I got the big call,
Yeah.
when I'm playing these cards and everything like that. So, it just makes everything greater because she's been there throughout my journey.
Yeah.
She supported me throughout my journey. You know, she's never been one of them, well, you're gonna have to choose between me and choose between me. You know what I mean? Like, she's like, what you want to do, I'm here to support you.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I always tell her that she has such an anointing on her life. I've saw her share her testimony to other women before, and just seeing the effect that her sharing her testimony has had on these women, it inspires and encourages me so much, you
Right.
know? But you know, she's been a special education teacher for a very long time,
Oh,
and
wow.
she's recently moved to school counseling. So you know, just whether it's her in the classroom or her in that counseling position, she's helping. You know, she's helping that younger generation. You know, and just she's helped me, you know, especially when it comes to doing lessons and teaching online. You know, it's become kind of that thing of like, oh, you know, she can help me in my career in ways that I didn't think so. You know
Right.
what I mean? But
Right.
just like you said, having somebody along your side who's going, you know, not only be there for you or whatever like that, but just, you know, supporting, encouraging, you know, and being that spiritual, like that spiritual drive for you as well. There's been times where my faith was low. You know, I don't know if you've been in points in your career where you may not have had a gig on the schedule for another 2 or 3 months, but I was there before. You know what I
Sure.
mean? I didn't have not one single gig on the schedule. And, you know, it's just like something gonna come through. You know what I mean? Even when I don't think it is. You
Right.
know, when my son was born, he had a heart condition.
Mm.
And her faith, I feel like, was so strong that it served as enough faith for me and her because my faith got low, you know, just kind of seeing what the doctors were saying and things like that. I'm just like, dang, I don't know what's gonna happen, you know. And you know, she's just like, God's got us, like we're gonna be good. And, you know, we pray and everything like that. But you know, she knows much more about carrying, of course, you know, and things
Right.
like that than I do. And you know, just sharing, you know, sharing a quick testimony.
That's real,
You know,
bro.
I mentioned my son's heart condition, and you know, the doctors were like, okay, you know, do these X-rays and this, that, and the third. And she's like, X-rays can actually harm an infant. I didn't know that, you know, but she did. And you know, thankful, you know, also for my mom and my aunt who were prayer warriors in this time as well, and just praying over our son and just keeping our faith and asking God, like, you know, what's supposed to be, let it be, you know, let your will be done kind of thing. And, you know, just having that faith that my son is going to be good. And, you know, shortly after that, he's growing, he's eating, he's healthy and everything like that. You know, just those kind of things really help when it comes to this whole thing
Yeah.
that I call life. You know, it gives me different perspective and everything like that. So, but yeah, sorry that was
No,
such a
no,
long.
man. Hey, well,
You know,
listen.
thank you so much.
Congratulations on
Yeah,
that. Congratulations on having an incredible wife, it sounds like. And listen, y'all, all the people watching, this is part of it. We can't just only focus on what a chop is or what somebody's playing there.
right.
You know, we spend far more time off stage than we do on stage. And we're gonna
Yep.
and we're gonna encounter these types of situations. This is part of life. And I think, you know, it's very, I mean, that was very moving what you just said. I could feel the energy and the emotion from what you just said. And, you know, listen, our wives sometimes they do pick up the slack and they look at things we're not looking at because we're out, you know, trying to be the breadwinners and do this and do
Mhm.
that. And they're looking at certain details and certain things that we overlook, especially now, you
Yeah.
know, because they have their intuition and they got chat and Claude. So now they really looking at stuff, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, you know, I completely hear you on that one, man. Well, Haze, man, listen, bro. Man, this has been a wonderful conversation. I mean, it's been inspiring to me, man. I love hearing stories. I mean, you're a young man, but you're very wise, man, and just stay on that path of your thought process and your discernment that you've been using, and you're gonna have a real long and prosperous career, no matter what you want to do. There's no pressure to do anything, right? It's like you're doing what you're doing, and that's what you're supposed to be doing. You know, sometimes I feel like when it comes to the production stuff, people feel like there's a pressure. I'm a proponent for if you're going to do it, okay, learn how to do it right and do it. But if it's not your thing, don't do it, because you're just going to be in a rabbit hole, buying gear, wasting money, wasting time without the results. You know what I'm saying? Yes, sir. Yes.
Yes. Yes. I wanted to get back around to that, man. Oh my goodness. I wanted to get back around to that. I wanted to get around to that when you were talking about all of the Drumhead selections.
Mm-hmm.
So just as a tip for everybody, because I'm sure y'all saw it before, on the back of your Drumhead packet, there's a list of the different drum heads that are offered. I know Remo does it. I'm not sure if Evans or whoever else does it. I know Remo does it. They'll show you the black suede. They'll show you the X. They'll show you the ambassador, the emperor, the coded. And it also has the description of what that drum head would sound like. All right.
Right.
So if you've never taken time to actually read those descriptions, please just read the descriptions. And these days we have Google. Go ahead, search up what an S hoop is.
Right.
Search up what a bearing edge is. Just search up all of these things just to kind of help gain your knowledge around drums, please, y'all. But yeah, man, like you said, I found myself in that position where this was back when the clear Power Stroke 77 came out. And you know, we had back from my area, we had Jamal and Aaron. They were the Remo like guys, you know, the Remo and DW guys around the area. And you know, they were putting out videos and they were playing it. And we're all like, oh my gosh, like we need this drum head. I get the drum head. I'm like, this isn't the sound that I'm going for. And at that moment, I did realize, like, okay, I got it because of the hype of who I saw playing it, not understanding that this isn't the sound that I necessarily want to hear. So while the drum head is great for what it's great for, it just wasn't great for me. I wanted to hear that coded emperor on my snare, cranked up, sounding good. But those experiences have helped me to really understand what sounds I'm going for and how to choose what I want out of what I'm going for. So it's like the difference between an 8-lug snare and a 10-lug snare. You know, having that real crack is going to come from that 10-lug because you have more room to play with now. You know, and you know, it gets into drum sizes, drum woods, and hoops, and all of this, all of this extra stuff that I didn't feel like I took a lot of time to learn when I was younger. But for the younger people who are watching this, take time now to learn it so you don't, make all of the mistakes and spend all of the money that I spent trying to go for sounds and I'm getting stuff that can't even create the sound I want, you know?
Well, I will say, you just reminded me, one of my, you may or may not know, but I also develop software. So one of my apps is called Snare Lab, and it's actually a great tool for what you just described. You know, you go get it on the Apple App Store, Snare Lab, because you can just type in a song and it's going to tell you who played it and what the drum was. And then it's going to tell you how to get your drum to sound like that drum. So you could be like, what's Billie Jean? And it's going to say, Ndugu Chancellor used a Yamaha so-and-so or a Ludwig so-and-so with a, Kevlar head. And you can say, well, I have a Pearl Export snare, and then they'll say, okay, well, take this and put this head on it and put some moon gel here. Then it has a tuning thing where you go to each lug and it gives you the tuning, the specs. So when you hit the right tuning, it lights up, lets you know each lug is right. It literally will help you tune your snare drum and your drums. And you could also take a picture of any drum and it's going to classify and tell you what it is. So that's a way to help what you said. But I'm actually going to also post, right now, you're seeing the back of a Remo box with the actual heads on it because Haze said to do that. And I'm going to admit, I forgot about that. I've been with Remo since I was 15 years old. So that's almost 40 years. So it's like, I forgot about that. I'm looking online, I'm listening, always looking to see what's new. I live, thankfully, I live about 25 minutes from DW, so I always go there. Like I haven't, unless it's been, I was out of town or a tour rehearsed in Nashville or something like that, I never even let them send me drums. I love the whole thing of going up there, putting them in the truck. I mean, we've been doing this literally since 2005. So it's like, I love that. So that's one of my things. I go up there and get the drums. Same with Remo. They can send them, but I just drive up to Valencia. I'm old friends with Chris. Shout out to Chris and Roger. Shout out to Jules and Steve and the whole Lombardi family, all of our folks at DW. Shout out to Chad Brandolini at Vader. You know what I'm saying? Shout out to Chris. Chris is my guy, even though I'm not with Sabian, but I know Chris for years and years and years, and then Jules and the whole connect. So it's beautiful, man. The drum family is beautiful, man. But your energy, Haze, is also beautiful, my brother, man. So I really, 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 really appreciate you coming, man, and giving these incredible words of wisdom that I'm really, glad people are going to be able to go back to and reflect. So, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Haze Amaze, what an incredible time. Incredible time, man. It's been an incredible conversation with you, bro. I really love this one, man. I really appreciate it, man. So,
God bless you. I appreciate you for having me.
Absolutely, man. All right, y'all. Well, another great episode with the great Haze Amaze. This was a great conversation. Once again, I'm Trevor Lawrence Jr. It's the TrevBeats Show, and we out.
It's the TrevBeats Show, and we out. We out. We out. We out. We out. It's the TrevBeats Show, and we out. It's the TrevBeats.